today. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you are doing okay. I am Pragya Agrawal from the Cyberblog India, and I will be your host for the evening. This is going to be our fifth Instagram live session as a run-up to our 2022 conference titled "Abuse and Harassment in Cyberspace Beyond the Perceived Notion of Mainstream." So, for the people who are joining in for the first time, I'll just tell you what the conference is all about. What the conference seeks to do is that it seeks to initiate a discussion on the threats faced by the LGBTQIA plus community members on the internet and to facilitate sharing the niche stories and first-hand experiences of the community members and to raise the awareness about the challenges faced by the community while dealing with cybercrime incidents and and if you want to know more about the conference, you can for sure drop us a text or follow our Instagram page where we have been updating very frequently about the conference. As for our fifth panelist today, let me just introduce Shruti Sharada to you. She is sorry, I'm so sorry. Shruti is a queer feminist writer, strategist, and a gender-based violence activist based in Bangalore. She is a former journalist and community media person and advocates passionately for mental health awareness and disability inclusion. Shruti's piece titled The Sexual Violence of Flashing and the Problem with Saying It Could Have Been Worse won the National Laadli Media Award in 2020. As a trainer and advisor, her prime focus is on creating awareness about gender equality, queer affirmative policy, and feminist leadership among students of professionals. When not working, you will find her gardening, baking, or binging true crime documentaries and podcasts. She is excited about the start of summer because she can now guzzle iced coffee again, as you are right now. I just drank a huge glass of iced tea before joining this session.
Blessings.
Thank you so much, Shruti, for accepting our invitation and being a part of this conference. I would request you to add anything else that I have missed and would like the audience to know.
Yeah, that's what I do. Off late, my focus has been on leading workshops, conducting sessions, where the focus is on gender equity. And I've realized that be it students or professionals who are already working with youngsters or they're part of NGOs or collectives, even they want to go back to the basics, So
Right.
you go and you expect them to ask about, oh, what are the latest developments in the world? But really not. They're actually asking, okay, can you go back to the definitions? Can you explain to us the difference between sex and gender? Can you
Right.
explain to us what sexism really constitutes? So that's been a surprise for me. And honestly, everything that I'm doing, I've been doing lives and panels and especially training sessions of late. It's been an effort to question my own privilege, like what position do I hold, how much can I
Right.
speak, or how can I help bring some sort of change. And also, for the longest time, I couldn't have a lot of these conversations because of my own trauma, because of my own biases and
Right.
prejudices. So this is my way of saying, okay, if I'm complaining about certain things, and there is a lot to complain about, what am I doing? If I want a solution, I really need to get out there and bring
Right.
my part in. So this is my way of, talking and hopefully making some dent in an environment where we really are so tired of facing harassment and facing discrimination.
So you said that people are asking for the basics, going back to the basics.
Yeah.
Do you think
Yeah.
that, or are you thinking that, why don't people already know this, or do you want to focus on the basics as well? Do you think that this is important?
Of course, I can't say I'm not annoyed because people plan entire international vacations on Google, but they will expect a feminist to come in or a queer person to come in and say, hey, can you please explain what LGBTQIA plus stands for?
Right.
It's very easily Googleable,
Right,
but
I
people
would agree.
don't do it. Unfortunately, any activism, any advocacy, any kind of effort that you make, is a lot of mental labor, is a lot of
Right.
expectation from the community members themselves to please come in, please tuition us on why we should include and why there should be diversity. So definitely there is that layer of annoyance and that layer of sort of unfairness you have to deal with.
Right.
But for me, and I'm going to touch on this. Like I am the older millennial. I've been whining and complaining about so many things. I've faced a lot of harassment and abuse. I have not just online but offline. So for me, the thing is, how do I push through, and what do I do as a queer person to
Right.
even out the space for queer persons who are younger than me, who are going to come later. I feel it is my
Right.
responsibility as a queer person who has certain privileges to at least make an attempt to make a space which is safer, which does not at least have as much harassment as we face,
Right. Right.
so this is my effort at doing it. It has been a surprise that people do ask for basics, but I'm also in a way glad that I can start from the basics, because then I'm like,
Right.
okay, I'm starting from the basics, so please unlearn a lot of things, commit to it, and let's start from the foundation of what is to be understood.
Right, right, right. I understand that. It gets really surprising that people are still going on about the topic is why do we need to include queer
Yeah,
people and
yeah,
why do we need this? Like, kyun kare type of thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that is very surprising and that's actually saddening, in fact.
Right, right.
So, what I would like to ask you is that what feminism is to you personally, like as an individual.
Yeah. Feminism has meant freedom. It has, and I speak about this also because I speak about gender-based violence a lot. I am a survivor of gender-based violence at home. I grew up with it. Then later, so it's been one, great kaleidoscope of harassment. And also, unfortunately, tragically, I realized that so many of us have that experience.
Right.
Women, female presenting persons, non-male persons, effeminate persons, and of course, when you go ask queer persons, there is so much to speak about. So violence is so much around us. We're talking
Prevalent.
about pandemics and endemics, but really, for me, the greatest endemic and the greatest pandemic has been violence of some sort of the other, which is connected to your gender, which is connected to your expression of gender, which is
Right.
connected to your sexual identity. It exists and it's so normalized and so ignored and
Right.
so almost expected. Like, of course, these things happen. It's
Yeah.
okay. And also, there's so much victim blaming. Like, you should go expecting
Exactly.
it.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
this is
So,
supposed to happen. This is how the
right,
norm has become
right,
right now. But you
right.
did this. That is supposed to happen. Okay. Just move
Yeah.
on with it.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of persons I understand do not like the term victim. But for me, it was very important to realize that I'm a victim. Only when I realized I'm the victim of violence, of whatever other discrimination that I was facing, could I start taking action to hopefully get out of the situation or find help or find support.
Right.
So I think feminism is connected to that, because feminism gave me the language to understand abuse, to understand my rights, to seek out help. Because my initial sort of information that I got was me reading about other victims and survivors of violence. So that was so powerful for me.
Right.
It was not necessarily about, oh, did they escape or not? Or
Hmm.
what are they doing now? It was not about that, because I know at my heart that not everybody can escape. Even
Right.
escaping from abuse is a matter of extreme privilege. But just the awareness that there is that articulation outside, that there a movement exists where women and other persons are talking about equity,
Right.
about talking about queer rights, talking about identities beyond the binary, was so powerful. So that was my start with feminism, and that has what has continued. And really, it percolates every aspect of what I do. So
Right.
when I write, I'm very obviously feminist when my advocacy is obviously feminist, and I'm a very proud and rabid feminist if need be,
That's
because
great.
yeah, so that's really been my ticket to understanding so many aspects of my life and existence, So yeah, that's what it means to me at the core of everything else.
That's great. That's great. It's great that you have found something that
Yeah,
actually percolates to all of your beliefs, and it's helping you. That's great.
yeah.
So, how has your journey been on the internet, and how do you deal with the hate comments that come up on your posts or anywhere else?
Okay, let me start with my journey of internet. So I'm 35. So I'm one of the, I think, few, like I'm part of a generation which kind of knows the pre-internet phase.
Right.
Um, I remember like before internet, things were so much simpler. I kind of miss it sometimes.
Me
uh,
too. It was great.
yeah, yeah. And I think that has really triggered this nostalgic thing on the internet during the pandemic that people are seeking out like 70s, 80s, 60s, older stuff because they really miss quote unquote simpler times. Of course, there were a lot of problems then, but it just seems simpler. It just seems like, oh, there were no
Yeah.
influencers and there were no like, 100 chat apps where, people are constantly pinging your phone. So, yeah, my initial school years, of course, I didn't have the internet. It didn't exist in our consciousness. I was also a person from a very small town in Gujarat, so and a family who couldn't really afford things immediately. So technology sort of came in late for us. So it was a very basic PC. We had the dial-up, which made that weird
The
sound,
sound.
we could barely download anything. And so initially it was just like email, a little basic browsing. I think initial social media was Orkut, if you
Yeah.
do you
The
okay.
first, the OG
So
of the internet.
yeah, the OG, very simple, kind of basic, but again, you kind of miss that basicness of it. So Orkut was the initial social media. Honestly, I didn't know MySpace, nothing of that. Okay, so yeah, I think personally I was not that aware. Maybe people from my generation did use it. So that was the first brush. Also, trigger warning. I just want to speak about a little abuse, not yes, downloading at 10 kbps. So true. So every image, every video was like a lot of commitment, and I remember like sitting for hours
This
um,
is
looking
moving.
at that. Yeah, it moving, and also sometimes giving up midway. Close to coming through, it would give up, and just the disappointment of it, and everything would buffer. So yeah, so we had very basic access, and it came in quite late in my school life. Yeah, I would say trigger warning because I'm talking a little about abuse, not detailing it. But I grew up in a very, very abusive household, and my father was the perpetrator. And I tell you why this connects to my story of internet.
Right.
When it comes to abuse, there is a lot of control, of course. The center point of abuse is control, especially of thought, especially of a reality that is beyond the house itself. So you can understand internet was a threat to him, you know, because
Yeah.
internet would come in, we could email, we could suddenly be open to the world, we could
Right.
interact with people who are sitting in different countries. Suddenly, that's very risky business, especially for a person who's abusing you, who's trying to control information, because that's the only way he can abuse you. Because you are
Right.
so cloistered and you think, okay, this is the world, this is how it works, every family is like this. And whatever truth he is telling you is the truth,
Is the right one.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So internet for him was a big threat. So socioeconomically, of course, we couldn't afford a lot, but also in his head, he didn't want it to happen. So
Right.
he would not get a good PC, even if he could afford it. He will not get a better connection or something of that sort,
Right.
because he's like, oh my God, if my daughter, especially the women of the house, start
Yeah.
experiencing world outside, and maybe they'll come across women who are working, who are whatever
Right.
was going on in his head, my control is at risk. So he was never interested in getting there. Also, the aspect was he was just a despicable, awful man, who was not open to learning anything. So this was a new
Right.
thing, and any new thing for a lot of people who are close-minded is a threat.
Difficult. Yeah.
So that was my initial experience of internet. I think the freedom of internet I started honestly experiencing only in my first job, which was at 21, and I joined Infosys, which was
Right.
one of those dream medical engineering sort of job. Like
Yeah.
every good girl from every small town has to join Infosys and improve her, I don't know, marriage chances or something
I
like that.
feel like that's still the
So
case that's going on.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
feel like
That's very disappointing because it's been a long time since I experienced it.
that is saddening. But yeah, Infosys still remains a big company.
Yeah, there is a lot of psychological, like there is a lot of matrimonial cookies to be gained out of joining Infosys. That's not what was in my mind. Infosys gave me a job, and I'm like, okay, I get to escape my freaking house. I'm running. So that's what I joined. But that's the first time I had a cubicle. I had my own PC, which was like assigned to me, and the desktop was mine, the folders were mine. It was me accessing my inbox. So
Right.
the length of exposure to internet, that's where it kind of started. So that's when I first started chatting, first started experiencing what all I can do beyond just basic emailing or whatever else.
Right.
So the browsing, and then it was linked to the printer, so then I could print out stuff and read a lot more online news, and especially a lot of articles, opinion articles, which really was very, very empowering initially.
Right.
So yeah, that was my experience, and then slowly it got better because then I started earning my own money, so that gave me freedom to sort of get my own laptop, get my own stuff. So yeah, long-winded story, but that's my initial experience of the internet.
Right. Right. Internet does give a lot of people the freedom, and it has to me
Yeah,
as well,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it provides a lot of support. So, how
yeah.
do you deal with the negative part of the internet, which comes
Oh
in
yeah.
the state of like hate comments on posts?
I'll tell you, initially, I think, like a lot of people, I guess, I had a more, um, uh, I think, a kinder idea of internet. Like I thought internet is a nice space.
Right.
The idea of facing harassment online was quite shocking, honestly. So I don't remember the first instant or the first few instances, of course, because there have been just so many. And also, initially, things were only building up. So, be it Facebook or be it any other chat fora or any other space,
Right.
the safeguards that we have today, which we take for granted and which we, advocate for, they didn't necessarily exist then. So, a lot of people could message you very freely,
Right.
you couldn't restrict comments. So, all of this has come quite late
Yeah.
in the game. So, what felt like freedom to post your photo would immediately be shattered because somebody would send you a very, very vulgar message as
Yeah.
response to that photo. So, most of the initial experience, I think, was that, like how my what was freedom to me in the sense of, okay, I can present myself to the world doing something or sitting with friends or visiting some place, a very innocuous, harmless photo, really
Right.
can elicit that sort of response. So that was the initial shock of the harassment.
Yeah.
And it was from a wide range of people, some who identified themselves, some who hid behind, sock puppet names or didn't have photos, stuff like that.
Right.
So you didn't even know who these people are. Can I trace them back? Can I go? Like, that awareness didn't immediately exist. So later, the arc of understanding is initially you access internet, you're very happy, this world opens up to you, and then like in the real world, immediately there is a barrage of things happening which is restricting your freedom, which is suddenly making you feel unsafe, and then you have to learn new things. You have to learn about blocking people. You have to learn about, okay, how do I restrict audiences to what I post?
Right.
You have to then suddenly go to your settings and try to understand all those things. So um, I think there is this arc to accessing the internet, where
Yes.
you first experience something, then you immediately face like a backlash, and then you realize, okay, this is not as free a space as I think it is. It
Yeah.
is actually just like in the world, you have to filter it, you have to control who sees what and whom you interact with.
Right.
And when there is harassment, of course, initially I did try to engage with it, like I would answer someone saying something.
Right.
Or if somebody messaged me or DM'd me, then I would try to reply, which I don't do now. Absolutely not. I just go ahead and block them. I control as much as I can. I lock my profile, make it private, whatever else that I can do. But initially that didn't exist. So I think by engaging, and I didn't understand the dynamics of this harassment. So by engaging, I kind of made them happier. They got happier and they would engage more and they would say more. So it was just like a long phase of understanding how to deal with harassment. So most of the harassment I would face would be about my looks, about what
Right.
they want to do with me. I don't want to categorize any particular gender, but most of them were men and male presenting. And most of it involved how they wanted to have sex with me. Some of them would describe how they wanted to do it. Of course, there was the R word that was used again and again. And it was so shocking because I'm like,
Right.
I just went to a beach and I posted a photo, you know?
Right.
Why is it eliciting this sort
This
of,
response.
yeah, it was shocking. And it takes a lot of time to get over that shock and realize, okay, I don't want to leave this space. So what do I do? So then I have to equip myself with other information. So you start reporting posts and whatever else is available to you. And it also helped to speak with people and understand how do I deal with these things, like
Right.
initially I also made mistakes about not protecting my number or email ID. It was kind of open. So again, it opened up like a lot of weird interactions. So initially, yeah, I think now that I look back to it, I didn't have the tools to deal with it.
Right.
Um, I did often think about, okay, maybe I should just not go on the internet, but I'm thankful that I didn't do that, that I
So,
continued.
so what suggestions do you have for the young queer people who are just starting on the internet, or even the closeted people that are on the internet who are facing such hate there? Like, what should they be doing? Because I believe that awareness is a huge, huge part on, you know, just talking about it.
That's a that's a very tough question because it's also a very layered answer, honestly. See, I don't personally want any queer person to feel unsafe. Nobody deserves to feel unsafe. Nobody deserves to hear uh, nonsensical things on the internet. Nobody deserves to face harassment and bad language or any other sort of abuse. So that's at the center of it all. But also, it is difficult to not acknowledge that the stakes are still very uneven. It's still a very stilted landscape. We are still fighting for basic rights, and
Right.
internet definitely reflects our real life. As you know, queer rights struggles continue so strongly offline. We are still fighting for very basic identities, basic recognition. We are getting upset and disappointed and very scared because a lot of progress is also being backrolled.
Back.
So we
Right.
see the same reflected online. So, as I said, that I don't want any queer person to feel that they can't be themselves because that's what we are fighting for. That's where the joy
Right.
is, you know. So one thing that I speak about when I speak about violence, especially online, is pick your battles, because we know what, like how much resource we have with us, like
Hmm.
what sort of protective layers surround. So if you feel you are able to reply to some sort of harassment or take some action, please do. That's your absolute right to do. But do not feel that that's your only option. So
Hmm.
muting, blocking, not ignoring, but blocking definitely, restricting your audience, all of these are viable options which I feel you should never feel ashamed to use.
Right.
Because not all of us are always mentally, physically, or in any other form, always prepared to face harassment and always
Hmm.
have some answer to harassment or some sort of report. So this
Yes.
forcing that no, you have to report everything, that you have to take action against everything, is also very stifling. I may not be up to it all the time. And if I get
Hmm.
20 such messages, how many am I supposed to go after?
Reply to.
So,
Right.
yeah. So, as much as I'm cautious about being safe, everybody having access to the internet where they have their rights respected, their identity respected, I also emphasize the fact that it's absolutely your right to pick your battles. If you don't want to
Right.
engage, it's your right to block and not engage. That right exists for you. And when you find your space, when you find your resources to advocate for change, speak up, then please use that channel to speak up.
Hmm.
But online
Right.
generally, um, of course, I have a lot of queer friends who want to present themselves fully, but that's a constant struggle on a daily basis.
Right.
We are not able to present ourselves, our relationships, the way we dress, without ever risking some or the other sort of backlash.
Hmm.
So, like I said, like initially I really struggled with it, and then I've sort of grown. So there is this sort of evolution in how you deal with it. You realize that, okay, this is how I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to wade through and still present myself because that is what is important for me. More power to you.
Right.
I also again want to emphasize that it's the it's the landscape that is wrong. It's the
Hmm.
harassers who are wrong. It's the abusers who
Yeah,
are
I
wrong.
agree.
It's not us who are wrong. We are only staking claim to be ourselves.
Right.
It is our right to be able to present ourselves. It is our right to be able to hold hands with our partners and post a very innocuous photo, which a lot of
Hmm.
cis hetero people do all the time.
Right.
So it's not you, it's the system. And I understand that we have to fight against the system, but fighting against the system gets very, very tiring, very frustrating, and
Hmm.
also very re traumatizing. So pick your battles, what works for you, please make it work for you. Uh, you should never feel the need to do the mental labor or
Right.
any other sort of
Hmm.
labor um, because you feel you need to do right by the community. That pressure should not exist. I
Hmm.
know it's not a straightforward answer,
No.
but honestly, it is a struggle every single day. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes you're struggling with one comment, and I'm like, okay, if they have said something particular in that comment, should I engage or shouldn't I engage? Should I
Right.
just continue living and not look at things, or should I engage and be more forceful, be more assertive?
Hmm.
It's a constant battle in your head whether to do that or not.
Right. As we are on the topic, and I wanted to ask this question later, but as a queer person, reporting is predominantly phobic, fearful, and tabooed in the society.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
becomes really difficult. So, how do you think that a queer person could report and redress the instances of cyber abuse?
So use the settings that already exist for sure. Um, again, it's again, as you can understand, it's a tough question because you know what's
Right.
going to happen. We do
Hmm.
report so many things, and then it comes back that it doesn't violate community guidelines or some crap like that. You know, it
Yes.
really doesn't acknowledge the problem.
Hmm.
And the thing is, let's never forget that though internet is this all pervasive thing nowadays, it is still like the systems and the sites are designed by people and designed by a lot of sometimes white men, privileged cis hetero men, and their idea of safeguarding could be, is definitely very, very limited by their own life experiences. So
Right.
unless a lot of change also starts from that end, where there is diversity of voices and those people chime in and say, hey, the community guidelines have to change. The
Hmm.
complaints have to be redressed in a particular way, that we cannot have a very binary lens to addressing complaints about harassment, especially language, especially. Till that
Right.
change also is not working simultaneously, harassment and abuse will continue to be a very, very big problem. And also we'll have to continue and sit and scratch our heads as to how do we deal with it.
Hmm.
Now, Twitter, which is such a powerful platform for activism, for advocacy, for creating movements, running movements, sustaining movements, is also a cinder pot of so much abuse. And
Right.
and a lot of times there is so little protection coming from the site itself.
Hmm.
So what do you do then? Then you have to find your own corners, and you have to find your own specific groups or specific apps where you sort of bring in like-minded people. You have certain rules of admission that no, this is a safe space and nobody can say or do anything that harms anybody. And then you
Right.
have to find your own spaces and create your own spaces. Nothing wrong with that. But the truth is, we exist. It's a right to be able to exist in a larger space. We should not be forced to seek a microcosm of a safe space within the larger internet just because safety doesn't exist on these sites, which are used by a lot of other people with so much more safety and so much more openness.
Hmm.
So, one way to ensure is definitely, like we do offline, find your chosen family, find your safe spaces. Um, Definitely, if you feel something is amiss, see how you can advocate for it. There are many ways of advocating. So you can either start a petition, you can either start a movement like I guess Cyberblog is also doing, where the rules of engagement change on the internet. The
Hmm.
sites get more responsible. It's not enough to just say, "Hey, we have a rainbow logo," or
Hmm.
whatever else. Like at Pride Month, we are doing this or that. If your site, if your app, if whatever interface you have is not safe for queer persons, then you're not an ally. You're just opportunistic, and you are taking advantage of whatever benefits you can get by proclaiming to be an ally while not doing any of the work.
Right.
So, if advocacy is what you feel we need to do, let's do it. Find your people. I think on the internet, that's one thing that you can do, where you can safely express yourself, not suppress yourself.
Hmm.
And yeah, again, I wish I could have a more pointed answer, but really there isn't, you know.
Yeah.
There are so many times that we look at a photo that shouldn't I post this? What's gonna come
Right.
after it? Uh, I know every individual deals with it in a different way. A lot of people I know believe in engaging with trolls and harassers.
Hmm.
More power to them. I don't do it because it adds to my stress and anxiety as
Already
to, oh my
strong.
God, yeah, yeah. So already there is so much, and now every time I post something, I have to justify why it was posted and why I shouldn't be harassed. You know,
Hmm.
so I think figure your way or your own way of engaging. I do feel there is nothing right or wrong. Part of the freedom of the space is to also pick and choose how you want to
Right.
engage with things.
Yeah, I think that people can take a lot from what you have said. Moving on to my next question, the socially used slang word of cross-dressing has become a huge part of the comedy, media, and television industry in the country today. How do you feel that this would impact a person who is just exploring their identity in the queer spectrum?
Very badly. I cannot express in words how much I hate this brand of quote unquote comedy. It's not
Mhm.
fun. There is nothing comedic about it. And I think any, again, quote unquote, comedy which um, depends on making fun of people based on appearance, complexion, how they speak, is the basest form of humor, if at all it's
Right.
considered humor. I feel it reflects how untalented you are, that's the only form of humor you can present. There is a way of being intelligent about humor, there is a way of being respectful about humor, uh, but you choose to do this. And honestly, it's disgusting to me. I cannot stand those shows, and I do not want to condone them in any way or form possible because it is misogynistic, it's sexist, it really does real harm to queer persons, to any person who's exploring their identity and their expression, because at the least it becomes a joke, but at worst it invites violence because again you're um, because the
Mm.
conversation is that these people are uh, asking for it. You know, these
Hmm.
people are asking to be harmed because they chose to present themselves differently. They know
Right.
how a man should look, so they are supposed to look like a man. Why are they choosing to do this? Like I have had um, people I've worked with who are cis women, cis men, who have come up to me and said things like, I'm okay with gay rights, but why do they have to present themselves like that? Why do they have to be so flamboyant? Why do they have to wear their sari like that? Why should they wear glitter? So I'm like, that's
Hmm.
very convenient for you that, like, thank you that you believe in gay rights. Like, that's such a great mehrwani that you have done on us. But now you want to dictate how we should present our gayness. So you understand. It's important that you understand allyship as not an invitation for you to dictate how gay, how trans, how queer we are supposed to be.
Right.
The whole point is there needs to be a space where we exist. We do not get up and tell you how boring you look. We don't.
Hmm.
We don't use that authority. We don't ever assume that we want to dictate what cis identity should be.
Right.
Similarly, when you say you're an ally and online or offline you are trying to create a space for us,
Hmm.
the understood fact is it is about we being able to present ourselves as we want to without harming anybody else. We are
Hmm.
just trying to honor ourselves and not be harmed in response to that.
Right.
So, comedy, as much as I hate it, I understand its influence,
Hmm.
and because of that influence, I understand that it's a great responsibility that you hold. I know that there is this huge conversation about cancel culture within the comedy circles that they are like, oh, nowadays we can't say anything. What I hear is that, oh, nowadays we can't be racist, sexist, misogynist
Right.
without somebody attacking us. So again, I go back to the fact that if misogyny, if sexism, if stupid husband-wife jokes about cross-dressing, about men looking like women or speaking like women, or a
Hmm.
hen-pecked husband, this is
Right.
your level of comedy, then you deserve everything that cancel culture brings you. Because cancel culture is not, um, of course, that's a different debate, but to categorize it all as cancel culture, as being something ridiculous and overreactionary, you're ignoring the fact that these are people who are affected by
Right.
what you do.
Hmm.
And if you just want your freedom to just say anything and get away with it, then please look at your privilege of being able to stand on that stage, dress up like a woman as you understand it, say nonsense, and then later claim that, oh, I am the victim because people are complaining against me.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I've made it clear that I hate it. And it's, see, as I told you, we are already working with the basics. So people are
Hmm.
asking stuff like, okay, what does transgender mean? What does queer mean?
Right.
And then they see this,
So that just
where,
puts us backwards with the whole
yeah,
conversation and
yeah,
the movement, because they are
absolutely.
saying that, oh, it's a thing to joke about, but while all the while there's a movement that's going and on and saying that, this is normal, this is who we are.
Yeah, and that's the part of the frustration because here you are asking us to invest time, put in mental energy. Please explain to us why should we be diverse? Why should you exist? Why can't we harass you? You're asking us this, okay?
Right.
While at the same time setting up pop culture examples which clearly harm us. So, what happens to you on the stage, which you victimized yourself for, has an effect outside. It affects
Right.
somebody's safety, it affects somebody's life, it affects somebody's social interaction, it affects somebody in terms of how they want to present themselves. So they start thinking, oh, great, now this joke is doing the rounds, I think I should just dress, simply or however is more socially acceptable just to escape any backfall of that joke.
So from
You
this,
have
I
restricted
have
that person. Yeah.
Yeah. From this, I have another question. That the OTT platforms are now coming up with a lot of queer content through series or through movies. What do you think can be changed with the coming of queer content in the mainstream industries, with the big faces and that are there? And how can we make the content more queer inclusive?
Again, representation matters. I'll say that again and again. We want to see people who look like us, believe in us, who are allies, whatever else, out there thriving. Uh, you, I mean, cannot understand the power of seeing that, of somebody winning an award or just being on the stage, being able to speak. It's such a powerful thing to experience that hey, I never saw somebody going out there and declaring that, hey, I'm gay, I'm queer, and this is what I live, and I'm living well, and I'm happy, and
Right.
I'm able to advocate. There is power. I cannot articulate how incredibly empowering and amazing that is to see. So representation matters, but representation needs to be done right. Representation also is a matter of extreme responsibility.
Right.
So, if your film or show on an OTT platform, which is really taken off, is again showing a cis man dressing as a woman, and you are projecting that as an empowering trans story, you're again doing more harm.
Right.
Because then again, this representation is dangerous. This representation at the base of it all is misleading because again, you're perpetuating the story that trans persons are just one gender dressing up as another gender. It's not dress up that trans identity is, you know. Um, so as much as we want to push for representation, just the fact that there is a trans story, just the fact that there is a trans angle or a queer angle or a same-sex angle of any sort or an asexual angle exists, just that fact is not enough. We need to analyze how that fact is played out. So as much as I'm happy that OTT platforms are sort of looking at this aspect, for me, this is also a point of critical analysis as to how they're doing it. Because don't throw crumbs at us and say, hey, but we did this, so be happy. You always have a problem with everything. Yes, we do have a problem with everything because the landscape already is extremely uneven and dangerous, and there is already so much harassment. So you just doing the bare minimum is hurtful, is dangerous, and is honestly pointless. Second, if you're doing it as a PR exercise, it is insulting because you clearly are just wanting to capitalize on the movements that queer communities have worked so hard to build. It's not about you, it's about the queer persons. So that's my overall problem with this comedy OTT platforms. Okay, you're thinking about queer stories, great, but how you do it really matters. So, how do you make it responsible? Hire queer people, hire trans actors, hire transgender writers. There are creatives who exist. I will always refuse to believe and vehemently fight anybody who says that we couldn't find someone. No, the truth is you didn't go looking for them. You didn't want to look for them. You didn't want to make the effort to hire them.
Exactly.
Please hire. people
I would
whom you
agree.
want. So if you're showing, say, an agender person on
Hmm.
screen, if an agender person is involved in the creative process and the execution of it is on the set in any capacity, you will see a difference in how it's projected. So my
Personal
problem
experience.
currently, yeah, my problem currently with whatever queer, however it is being sold, I don't know. My problem is the gaze is still cis hetero. The gaze is still very binary because how the story is told is where the truth is. So if it is a story about a queer person but is presenting a binary take on the queer person, then it's
Hmm.
not really saying anything, you know. It's
Right.
not really empowering me as a queer person. It is in a way making me a sort of a totem, a sort of a, I don't know what to say, that like I'm being viewed like a zoo
Hmm.
animal. And again, the story is about how a non-queer person is viewing me. It's
Right.
not the story of me as a queer person in my experience. It's about how the non-queer landscape is viewing me,
Hmm.
and also probably looking for, you know, applause for doing the minimum and including.
Hmm. Right.
Am I like jumping around a lot?
No, no, this makes sense. It actually makes a lot of sense because when we have talked to other panelists as well, they are a very similar opinion that, just having queer people in the whole process will definitely shift the prerogative to being realistic, being more real and what happens in the world. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So to think that you can just produce a show or have a
Hmm.
stand-up routine and not face any consequence to it is one also insulting yourself, right? So you just think that that whatever you do has no power. One, and so that's a bit of a cell phone, I think. Second, it does have an effect. So don't think that the queer movements, queer persons who are uh, doing so much, talking about so much, sharing their stories, which can be re-traumatizing. It's not the easiest thing to come out and say, you know, this is the abuse I felt, this is how I deal. Do you think that's the easiest thing to do? It isn't.
Right.
And then to bring out quote unquote representation, which is so limiting, which doesn't include us, which doesn't tell our stories honestly, which again expects us to be queer persons who are more palatable to
Hmm.
cis heteronormative standards, it's insulting. That representation really doesn't go anywhere.
Anyway.
So,
Hmm.
unless you understand the rules of representation and include us there, I don't see it as being anything fruitful or progressive, to be
Right.
honest.
Right. No, I would agree to that. I think for today, that are all the questions that I have. Uh, Thank you once again, Shruti. This has been a very holistic live session for me, and I had a lot of fun. I hope you had fun.
Yeah,
And
yeah, look at my cheeks. I'm like going red now because of all the gesticulation. But thank you so much for thinking of me getting here. As I told you, like this is the journey I'm on, and I just want to keep speaking till I can and want to, so that you know, because this is me using the freedom of the internet also, because
yeah,
I no longer want to shrink myself. I don't want to not be angry. I want to be openly angry because there is a truckload of
lot to
anger.
be
So,
angry
yeah,
about actually.
yeah, and I know for legitimate reason, and I feel the power of the internet is to be able to have spaces like what you have created, and I'm very grateful and thankful for you for creating this space so that we can express that anger and demand better. You know, don't, as I said, throw crumbs at us and expect us to applaud. Uh, we have fought for so long. And the way things are, we'll have to fight for a much longer time for basic rights, for recognition, for respect, for safety. So we want better from the world, and we want to be included in the stories that are being told about us, you know.
Yes.
Because if the gaze again is still binary, it really again is not doing anything.
not doing it. Right. Thank you so much. We look forward to having you in the panel and seeing what discussions take place.
Yes.
And
Yes.
once again, would like to say that after this session ends, we will be posting some support groups. And if you have any problems, you would like to get any help, we are always there in form of reporting or just you want to talk. The Cyberblog India is always available. Uh, Thank you so much, Shruti,
What is
for
the,
joining.
sorry, what is the kind of support group? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, if we face
We
harassment, we can reach out to
we
you,
would
sir?
be posting a couple of support groups, and we do that after every
Okay.
Instagram live session. That if somebody
Okay.
has any problems, these are the support groups that you can go to, the NGOs that can help better.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
they are more
Okay.
queer
All right.
centric and they would know how to report the cases and they specialize in that. So just to
Okay.
help.
Sounds great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rupi. Had a great time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.